Thanks for joining me, everyone. So, tonight I really wanted to just dive into these topics because for me, they're so important because they played such a pivotal role into making me the person that I am today. And I really couldn't have gotten to where I am at this point without God, without spirituality, and the ways that that has turned up and played out for me in my life. So, I'm just going to start right at the beginning where things kind of all began and how it's evolved over the years for me and to coming into full acceptance of where I'm at today. So just starting back, like I said at the beginning, I grew up in a church, but it wasn't a home for me. It wasn't something that I looked forward to. It wasn't something that I had really been drawn towards. And being baptized as a child, I didn't really understand um, the the magnitude of it and the weight that baptism holds when we go through such an act. And because I had been baptized at such a young age, I didn't understand um, why God had let something bad happen to me just a few years later. And I didn't understand in my young kid brain how to navigate this because all I had known is that I was told I was born again and my sins were washed away. But what about these sins that other people had just placed upon me because of their own selfishness and their desires? And how to approach situations, like how do I bring that up to my parents, how do I talk to my friends about it, why do I feel like such an outcast, how do I stop self-harming, how do I stop wanting to kill myself at 13 years old. And I didn't understand how God worked back then, and navigating these thoughts and emotions that created the behaviors that I was flown into. um, I gained a resentment for God. I did. I was pissed. Like, how could you let this happen to me? I didn't understand that it's not necessarily that God had let that happen to me. It's that I it was part of my destiny, if you will, to go through this, to come out the other side. Because I didn't realize in that time that I had been gifted with this trauma, and I didn't know how to get the gift part out of it. All I could see was the trauma. And I know that that sounds a little controversial, especially for a lot of people out there. They go through various traumas, and quite often the question is like, why did God let this happen to me? What's the point? Why did I live through this? Why am I still here after it all? And how do I go about living again? And how do I forgive? And so for me, that's kind of where I ended up, in this place of like, well, how do I forgive them? Because if I'm going to be stuck in this body and stuck in this situation and stuck in this life, I want to be able to forgive them so that I can at least like go to school in peace. And I got bullied back then quite often. I got labeled as the school slut. I got called all kinds of names. I had things thrown at me. I remember this one girl telling me, like, I don't know why this comment stuck out so badly, but she told me that I was too fat for my shirt. And I was only 13 years old, and like I didn't know better than what I had been exposed to. And being in such a space that, like, I felt I couldn't reach out to anybody about it. I didn't feel safe talking to other people. And I felt like I just had this big burden of shame and guilt inside of my soul. And I did. And so, that's where a lot of stuff started with self harming and with my substance abuse and with acting out with boys. Because at the time it was boys that, like, I was a kid too, you know what I mean? And and I thought that the attention that I would get from men, or sorry, from males, was some sort of validation in the fact that like I am, I have parts of me that are desired by people. And I felt that as long as I could control where I was putting my energy into, um, I felt some sort of power dynamic around sex. Because, when I had lost my virginity to um, somebody horrible, chances are it was somebody hurting. Um, you know, Grieving that was so heavy on my little soul that I felt, yeah, like almost compelled to try and prove to myself that I'm not the things that they said that I am. I'm not what he makes me feel. I'm not the secrets that I bear. I'm not the shame that is inside of me. I'm not these things, but I am in control of who desires what from me and where I'm going to put that. So it's a very sick way to think. And I realize that now that I was a hurting kid. I wasn't a slut. I was not any of the things that the people told me. I wasn't too fat. I might have been not wearing the proper type of clothing, but I didn't know any better. And I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted to be a normal kid. And when that, like the weight of realizing that that's not me, I'm not going to be a normal kid. How could I be? I've been thrown into this whirlwind of emotions that I look around the hallways at school and other people don't feel like that. I didn't I didn't know what to do. But of course, I would get the attention of boys. And I thought that like if I could grasp onto some sort of control with that, that would help me. I thought that if I could control the emotions that I had by numbing out with various substances, like that would help me. I thought that like if I could control my my eating disorders, which ended up being disorders, then that would help me. I searched for control outside of myself to no end. I thought that if I could get a 17-year-old boy to like me when I'm 13 years old, then that was some sort of win, because I felt validated by men because of the fact that I had been invalidated by a boy. And not knowing that I had been through trauma and that I had been through something that, I've looked up the word survivor before on this podcast, and like the word survivor is living through something that other people may not live through. And I didn't know that I was a survivor. I just knew that I didn't want to feel this way. I didn't want to feel my body, and I wanted it to go away by any means necessary. Because, like I said, I'm a kid. And so I didn't understand how God fit into this. I didn't understand how church had this like belief system in forgiveness and in salvation and in rebirth. And I didn't know where I lied in that, because I had been reborn as a child, but then this happens. And so I'm like, okay, what now? And in practicing forgiveness back then, what I thought was forgiveness, it ended up just being a tool to survive. a tool to not end up like killing myself, because that's what I wanted to do. And I truly believe that in forgiving this boy, what I thought was forgiveness at the time, and like, and his girlfriend at the time, and the people that had bullied me at school, and like, forgiven these people, I thought that maybe they would be able to like see me for who I was underneath all of that stuff. Um, of course, it didn't happen that way, but I'm hoping that in sharing this information and becoming vulnerable, um, that it helps somebody out there. So, um, if you can relate, leave a little heart in the comments or something, because like, it was something that as a kid, especially, I went through feeling like really alone. And yeah, I share this stuff to help other people know that they're not alone. So carrying on. Um, Life was a little bit weird for a while. It was the first time that I tried to kill myself when I was 13. Life became really, really rocky. I was in a lot of positions that I shouldn't have been in. And I was in a lot of spaces that I shouldn't have been in, with a lot of people that I shouldn't have been in. And looking back and taking responsibility for my young life now, um, it sure looks a lot different than it did back then. Because back then I thought that I had so much justification to be angry at the world and to hate everybody. And justified anger for me has always been kind of a touchy spot, because in as justified as I have been around the emotion of anger, I've come to now realize that anger for me has been an umbrella emotion for fear, for sadness, for guilt, for grief, for shame, for longing to be loved. Um, it's all encompassing for a range of emotions for myself. And back then, that's I needed to grieve. I needed to feel, and I needed to just have somebody hold me and tell me that everything's going to be okay and that they love me. But of course, like, how could I get that if I don't like share what's going on in my life? And it was about 6 months after the initial assault that I ended up, in the psych ward, and people started catching on, and self harm was getting kind of hard to hide at that point, with like in my own self and outside of myself, if that makes sense. And yeah, I ended up in the psych ward. I was in there for 10 days, and it was the first time that I had been diagnosed with anything. It was the first time like being on medication, and again tossed into another world that I didn't understand. And I'm like, where is God in all of this? Like, what is the point? Um, it reiterated the sense of abandonment that I felt from my higher power, from any sort of spirituality. It kept me away from what God had intended for me. Um, it's like it fed off of it. You know what I mean? Like, the diagnosis is the medicine, the removal from like different programs, removal from like certain parts of society, the removal from certain people, and like being placed into different things. Because like whenever something gets taken away or removed, like something also gets added, because that's the yin and yang of life, right? And I had no understanding of this back then. But like when I was removed from certain situations and placed into other ones, they weren't necessarily the right ones for me. And like, you know, trauma, if there's one thing that I've learned about working through it, is that some people, like predators, people that are hurting themselves, they've got quite a sixth sense for finding vulnerable women, for finding vulnerable girls. I remember um, when I was 15, I was assaulted by a guy that was 25. And if by any chance you're watching this, I have not forgotten you. And you know who you are, because this is about you. Um, just a little side note there. He was 25. And there was a lot of damage caused by somebody that had been hurt. I'm guessing either that or just like some sort of spawned from hell kind of human being. Um, when that happened and I was exposed to a grown man um, that had a fiance taking advantage of me as a young girl who didn't like have a chance with him. Um, I was like, okay, I'm done with God. Like, I'm over it. I have nothing left to, like, God just doesn't work for me. God is not a part of my story anymore. Like, basically F this. Like, I don't want anything to do with it because I know I thought I'm at the time, this is my thinking. I was like, I know what happens when I believe in God and when I forgive and when I try to just like be a functioning kid in a society that's run off of like sin and lust and greed and gluttony and like weaponizing themselves, manifestation of hurt and trauma within other people creates and manifests hurt and trauma in me. It did. And that like really screwed me up. So for a long time, I just I numbed out because God wasn't there for me, but pills were and booze was, and getting into different substances. Past that, it's just like my brain wasn't even developed, and I didn't understand where God was. I remember being 17 and I looked up AA for the first time, like maybe I need some help. And the steps I remember seeing God and I was just like, nope, like that is not for me. I don't want anything to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't want anything to do with Narcotics Anonymous, any sort of 12-step program that has anything to do with God. Like that is not for me. Thank you. Because I believed truly to my core that like if God's around or God's in it, like I'm going to get assaulted. I'm going to get hurt because at this point in time, I'm just like, okay, can I just not go like a couple years without something happening? Like, it's like there was like a time limit. It's like, and then something would happen again. And then it's just like, I couldn't catch a break. And I really like had to learn things the hard way. I survived that to, get into my early adult years. And it wasn't for a long time until I realized that I had been like suppressing these gifts that I had been given. I'm very in tune with certain psychic abilities that I am been gifted with. And even back then, like, I didn't want anything to do with them. I was just like, I don't even want my intuition. I don't want anything to do with like anything. I don't want to be different. I just want to be a human being like everybody else, not recognizing how spiritual of a being I am in this human existence. I was just like, nope, I'm going to cut the God part out and just be human. And like that really screwed me up for a long time, because like running off of my own self will and like thinking that I had to run the show, and like thinking that, I didn't have the mindset of God will provide. I had the mindset of I need to provide. I need to do this. I need to do that. Like the dollars, the this, the that, everything else. Like I didn't get it. And, we live in such a 3D conditional world that it's like, it's drilled in us to like stay skinny, do this, do this, do this. Like just do the things, stay grinding, and like stay hustling, stay busy all the time, do what you need to do to make a dollar, to pay the bills, all this stuff. And like I thought that that's where, like, I thought that that's what life was. I thought genuinely that that's what I got because of the things that I had gone through, like karma. I was like, oh, this is my karma for being freaking raped, like, which is so sick in itself. And this thought pattern like lasted so long, like for years. It was such a like core belief that I didn't know a way out of it. And of course, like throughout the years, it's just like, oh, we'll try this pill, oh, we'll try this pill, oh, we'll try this pill. Like the pills didn't work. The pills were such a band-aid. Like I've been on every single medication that you could possibly think of to do with anxiety, depression, PTSD, ADHD, all of them. And it works for a time because they're temporary band-aids. They're not supposed to cure me. They're not supposed to fix me because they can't. It's just a temporary solution. And I kept getting like told like to go through, do cycles of this, and then that doesn't work, and then do a round of this, and do this counseling, and do that group therapy, and do this another psych ward stint, and like this med change, and it's just detoxing, and then going on uppers and going on downers, and then like I'm not sleeping properly, of course, and so my brain's not working properly. Me, in the meantime, I'm still trying to like pay my bills and be a human, and keeping my back turned to God, because I was focused on the 3D world, and I was just so adamant on like just not creating more trauma. Like I really like believed that I was a good person, but I didn't like know how to be a good person to the point of like healing myself so that I can actually be a good person for other people, because I was hurting. And like I've said 1,000 times before, like hurt people hurt people. And that's where I was. And not knowing it, of course, that I was hurting people. Like I recognized some of it, but some of it I was just so deep in my subconscious that I couldn't I couldn't recognize it. I didn't understand that like hurting myself hurt other people. That was a thing for a long time too. I was just like, well, I'm just hurting myself. I'm just hurting myself. Like I'm just damaging my body. I'm just damaging my brain. Like if nobody can tell, then nobody knows, and it has nothing to do with anybody. So like why would I even deal with an issue or let anybody else come in and support me around an issue that if I could keep it hidden or contained, like keep this monster like contained, um, then it would be fine because I'm only hurting myself. And of course, that's not the case. That's not how things played out. And that's not healthy thinking. That's not a clear perception of reality as to what was going on. And so, in repressing these gifts that I had been given from the divine in order to maintain such a mundane, monotonous, depressive 3D existence by, staying with the toxic person, or fighting for toxic relationships, or, portraying toxic behaviors from myself for in front of other people. So like other people thought that like my toxic behaviors were a representation of me, which is so the opposite of what I wanted, but I didn't know how to get what I wanted, which was just like to be loved, to be secure, to be valued within myself, to be self-reassuring, to be in a state of life that it was just peaceful. And it was just such a fight. And again, every few years there's somebody that comes along and helps themselves. And, you know, if you're watching this and you've hurt me, like, I haven't forgotten you. No. Um, but that's what was my life for a long time. And, you know, it sticks with me because I didn't know how to move past it. I didn't know how to let these things go. And after, making some pretty terrible decisions and running my life essentially into the ground, um, without without a way out, I I found the gift of desperation. And for me, that looked like almost death. Like, I couldn't understand why I was still alive. Why am I still here? Like, what is the point? How, like, what do you want, God? You know what I mean? Like, why are you keeping me here? I was so angry and so confused as to where to direct this energy, because emotion is energy in motion in my body, and I didn't know where to put it, because the people that were around me loved me and I love them too. But then there was these moments where I would just like crap all over everybody. Excuse my language, but like I would really be an unfair, horrible human being to people around me because of the hurt that I had been exposed to and like didn't know how to deal with. And like I'm trying to do the suggestions, I'm trying to do the things, and like I'm tired of taking pills, I'm tired of talking to counselors, and like nothing is working. And so like nothing worked at the time up until then. There's this quote that I really love that I learned in early recovery. And it's that pain is inevitable and suffering is optional. And when I first heard this, like, I thought it was so dumb. I'm like, this is not even what I want to hear. Like, who are you to tell me that, like, my pain is inevitable, my suffering is optional? Like, if you only knew what they did, if you knew my life, if you knew the things I've been through, like, I thought I was so terminally unique. And it wasn't until realizing that, like I mentioned, desperation is a gift. I had been blessed with a rock bottom. I had been blessed with like falling through that floor and then hitting another bottom. Like, I had been blessed with the relapses. I had been blessed with my traumas because it gave me the motivation, the pain that I was able to cultivate into energy and to like actually making a change. And I didn't know what that change was going to be, but like I knew that something needed to change. And at that point, I was just like, you know what? Like, if God is this big almighty thing, like, where are you? Where are you at? Like, what am I doing wrong here? Obviously, a lot, but it was all part of my process. And it wasn't until I had hurt enough hurt inside of me that I just had to surrender to the idea maybe doing something different, maybe taking a suggestion from somebody else's playbook that had more recovery than me, that had things that I wanted, that had a life that they didn't like hate themselves. And I didn't know what that looked like because I had never done that before. I never like been quiet long enough to hear other people's suggestions. I had never like been clear-headed enough to actually like think of how other people's suggestions could impact my life. I had never been humble enough to say I need help. Like, what can I do differently? Because what I'm doing isn't working. And, that's kind of where I was at when I came into recovery. And when coming into recovery, it was just like 12 steps all over the place. Like, God this, God that, find your higher power, like coming to believe and like turning my will and my life over and all these things. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, I don't want to do any of this shit. Pardon my French, but like, I didn't want to do any of it. But what else was I going to do? Like, what other options did I have? And like, navigating the doubt in faith and in God, in recovery was like, it was like trying to like breathe water. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't built for it. I wasn't made for this. I didn't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't want to, my self-will was just running rampant, but like, I didn't want to have anything that these shiny, happy people with the sparkle in their eyes and, that prayed in a circle after all the meetings. Like, I didn't want anything to do with them because if they only knew how terminally unique and how different I was, and like, then they wouldn't be like that. And it was just the more differences that I could create between myself and these other people is what kept me sick. It helped keep the shame. It helped keep the guilt. It helped keep the the victimhood and the survival mechanisms thriving because I was able to sure put down drugs and dope, but then I still have the problem with men. I still have the fact that I was searching for validation within other people and places and things that I shouldn't have been. It brought me to um, different opportunities because I was making different decisions, but I still wasn't like getting what I wanted out of life. And I didn't understand because like, alcohol, it's called spirits. Like it takes away my spirit and like it takes away yours too. And it's just so horrible. And I was so naive in thinking that like just because I put it down that things would be okay. And don't get me wrong, for some people that's fine. I saw plenty of people in my lifetime, especially up until this point, where like they just put down drugs and dope and they think that they're fine. Well, that's not my story. And, I can appreciate that it's other people's, but it's not a life that I wanted to live because I had had such an extreme life up until this point that I needed an extreme recovery. But then again, coming back to God, I'm like, what is it about this God thing that like I'm not getting? Because I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Like, I'm trying to do the next best right thing and I'm trying to like show up and, live by the four agreements and being impeccable with my word and like all of the things that like I had slowly been learning to do because my brain needed to create new pathways. It takes a long time. And I had a psychiatrist one time that was told me, it's just like, Candace, like literally instead of like, you have these well-worn pathways, like a path, right? It's worn. It's in my brain. Those are my go-tos. I travel that road all the time. But now that I'm actively making a decision that like those roads aren't good for me, and how do I make new ones? So on this side of things, like I need to create a path, which is a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of sacrifice. It's not just like going down the path. It's actually like so much work to even get on the path and to even figure out where I want the path to be and like where I want the path to take me. Because where's the outcome here? Because that was the thing before too. It's like I had all these old pathways, but like where do they take me? Does it serve my best interest? Does it serve the ones that I love? What do I do with these choices that I now have? Because like it's it's insane. It was insanity. I was doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Meanwhile, trying to create new results and new pathways and not knowing how to do it because some of the people that I looked up to were still sick. Some of the people that I looked up to didn't want to have anything to do with me because I was still sick. Like, and some people in my life, met me where I was at. And for each of those genres of human beings, I am so grateful for it because they all taught me something. And, looking back, hindsight's 2020, and like God was never away from me. I pulled myself away from God. Like God kept me alive up until that point, and I didn't even know it at the time that God was working through those people to the point of having enough pain as a motivator to create new pathways. So it's a pretty beautiful place to be, actually, because there's so much freedom in the fact that I had a choice and it was new and it was scary. And like, I made a lot of wrong ones, but I also learned how to like live with the consequences of my choices. I learned how to think about the consequences of my actions. I learned how to think about the people that were in my life that my actions affected. And, I had never been able to comprehend that before. And I think that that's probably about the time when I started to like really recognize that that was a power greater than myself. That was something unseen that I had seen come to fruition in my life, something outside of fear. Um, there's a saying that I say sometimes, and it's like if I'm going to put my belief into something invisible, I'm going to put it into faith over fear because for a long time, I put my belief in in fear, and not even recognizing that that's what I was doing, of course. It's like not a conscious decision, but it's what survival mode had created me into, if that makes sense. And even having that little mustard seed of hope and faith for me to learn how to direct that little piece of energy to just shift it a bit, just shift the fear into faith. And it wasn't a God faith, I'll tell you that for sure. Back then, it was a faith in this person's not going to screw me over. It was a faith in like, hopefully I can trust myself to trust this person because I really want to. Um, and although that's still self-will, I believe it was me kind of working with God without even knowing it, because I had that piece of faith, and it cracked the door open just enough for me to take a look at my life. Like, what happened? Like, what did I just go through? You know what I mean? Coming out of that. And it's not pretty. It's not easy. It's actually quite uncomfortable. But like, if it was easy and comfortable, everybody would be doing it, because people like the path of least resistance. That's our human nature. But we also are spiritual beings. And we're just having a human experience. And because of all of this stuff that had clouded my existence from such a young age, I was finally able to like take a look at myself, to like feel like comforted by people around me in a way that like they don't want anything from me. They don't want sex. They don't want to assault me. They don't want to screw my boyfriend or like take my family and my friends and all this stuff. Like there's a lot of people that were mad at me. Do not get me wrong. Like in recovery, I was able to be loved until I could love myself. And that was like the break that I needed long enough to be able to like look at myself and be like, okay, what can I do? What can I do? Because I keep waking up. What am I going to do about it? Because this is a sick joke, but I don't have a choice anymore. Otherwise, like, I don't have a choice. So what is my choice going to be, essentially, if that makes sense? And I was able to feel safe enough for like just a small amount of time so that I could like figure out my favorite color. So I could figure out, what foods I like. I could figure out why I am ticking the way that I'm ticking, and like what had happened, and like the damage that had been done from myself and from other people, and the damage that I've created within myself and other people. Because like hurt people hurt people. But this was the pivotal point in which healed people heal people kind of came into effect for me, because that's not even kind of, that's what happened. And I began to just try and stay sober for like one day at a time. Try to not lash out. Try to show up. Try to understand and like label my emotions. Like that was a huge thing for me too, and realizing that there were other emotions other than anger, sad, and like sad, mad, and then happy. But it wasn't happy. It was fake. It was like it was this grasp of like this heightened emotion that I thought was happy, but I would hold on to it so hard because I knew that it wouldn't last. And to me, now today, I understand that all emotions come and go, and happiness and joyousness is our emotions that are to be honored as they're here and let go gracefully. And back then, I would just like cling on to it so tightly, and I would just want to like hang on to those happy moments of my life because they were so few and far in between. And all of those feelings that I had learned were gifts. It's all gifts. And this is how my trauma is kind of like transmuted itself into being a valuable propeller for the direction of my life, because the trajectory of my life had gone so sideways for so long, and then kind of correcting that, it's a lot of work, but it's also really worth it. And it allowed me space to start to see that, I could stay sober for a day. I could stay sober for 2 days. I could stay sober for 3 days. I could let somebody in and talk about some really hard things, and they're not going to backstab me. It gave me the faith that I had, enough faith to be able to look at like, what is my spirituality? Like, I am gifted. I do have good intuition. You know what I mean? I'm not perfect by any means. I am no saint, as my last video says, but I also do have great intuition. I'm a very smart person. And like, why was I numbing myself out? Why did these hurt people take my light? What did they want from me? Why is it my light? And the more that I worked and I looked into this stuff, and like, God is love and God is light. And when people are hurting, it's easy. I can't speak for really myself for this one, but when people are hurting, it's easier for them to take. from innocent, to take from like things that just kind of are vulnerable or are naive or are reliant or in a space of like a power dynamic, like even people that like beat animals and stuff like that. Like people are horrible and they take light from good things. And it was in that shadow work that I was able to like recognize that I am light. I have God in me. I have intuition. I have guidance. I have strength. I have faith. And like I can not want it all day long because of my core deep seated beliefs from childhood, that God had left me, that God didn't want anything to do with me, God forgot me, and so just like screw you. But it changed that for me. Like I said earlier, like God never left me. I turned my back on God. And yeah, so that's how it all began. I was able to like start getting into um looking at what other people do. What's your spirituality like? Like what's your God like? What's your higher power like? And that's where things got like pretty exciting. And it has evolved for me over the years, like it's gone from past on ancestors, and like even when God was like a group of drunks, or the great outdoors, or any of those acronyms that those 12-step programs like to say. I love them, but they worked for me for a while amount of time until I had placed my faith in even the group of drunks. And I'd gotten back enough that allowed me to heal different parts of me so that I could accept the fact that my ancestors are not ashamed of me, and that they do love me. And then, things evolve. My higher powers evolved. And I just think that it's so important to talk about this because, I was not terminally unique. I was not as like outcasted as I thought that I was, because of the way that I felt. And like I had let my feelings just like overrun and overpower so much of my life that I didn't know who I was without those strong emotions. Like I remember when I was a kid just being like, oh my God, how do I have such big feelings in such a little body? And like I can't be the only one that's felt that. You know, it's hard, but it's also worth it. Like the work is worth it, and like the surrender is worth it. And to be sitting here in front of you today telling you that Jesus loves you, and that Jesus loves me, and that God loves you, God loves me, the universe, the creator, every aspect that's God, the I am, loves you, and it loves me, even though I turn my back on God. And it's not an easy realization. It's not a pretty one. It's not anything that's like really profound to the world, because there's so much noise and extra stuff going on that we're distracted with, and that, we're told to think or do or believe, or things that are socially acceptable. Like all of these things that are distractions from my core being, it's noise. I let it all, I let it all get in the way between me and source. And, I'm on here today not to like, honestly, not to bare my soul, but just to like acknowledge the fact that it's okay to like, to get through it. It's okay to come back to Christ, or to the divine. It's okay to come back and say, like, it's been a really long road, but I forgive myself, and I forgive others. And that doesn't make what they did to me okay or what I did okay. It means that it doesn't have any power over me anymore because I have chosen a different way to live. And that's where living amends comes in. And like living amends is so beautiful because I'm able to like show love to the people that I hurt the most. I'm able to hold myself to a higher standard today than what I did before because until I knew better, I couldn't do better. And I don't know if you can relate too, but like I'm not the only one that like I can't, how can we do better if we don't know better? You know what I mean? And so like with this all being said, I just really encourage you to, if you've been struggling with your faith or struggling with your higher power or with God or with feeling like kind of left in the dust between the church and family and everything else in between, like I'm here to tell you that like it's worth continuing the path of like doing the hard thing, not the easy thing. Like the easy thing and the right thing aren't the same. And like the right thing isn't like what I want. The right thing is what's right. And, you know, coming back to like where I'm at today, like I've been baptized again. I got baptized again in December as an adult after everything that's happened to me. I've been able to like bring myself back into the church and back to the home of Jesus and the home of Christ. And I've been able to allow myself to be loved by the people and within the church because God is love. And not only did God show up for me in the rooms of recovery when I needed him to, God shows up in a lot of different places. He's met me where I'm at. And so now that I know better, I'm able to do better and I'm able to bring myself to places where I'm surrounded with God. And I'm a firm believer in like we are who we surround ourselves with. Like if I want to be a millionaire, I'm not sure gonna hang out with people that don't aren't striving for the same thing. And that's just of course financial abundance, but as an example. But like if people are seeking God and I want to seek God, I'm gonna hang out with those people because I I'm a human, but I'm also a spiritual being. And this is the duality of being in this body on this earth during this time because my skin, my flesh, when I'm hurt and bruised and beaten and I don't know any better, my flesh goes to sin. It goes to instant gratification and instant numbing and it doesn't care about my soul. It doesn't care about the eternal effects of everything because my flesh isn't going with me. The flesh, I've learned, is so encompassed in the sins of this world. And until we learn to control, not even control, I truly believe like mastering my emotions, I have not been able to completely give myself over to the divine. And that in turn allows me to live in a more spiritual way. And again, I'm not a saint, but I am here to tell you that living in God's will is like a total freaking game changer. By doing the next right thing, I'm able to show up for friends and family. I'm able to show up for myself. I'm able to show up for these podcasts. I'm able to be open and vulnerable with not only myself, but other people. And like, I'm hoping that this helps somebody else because I didn't go through all of this for nothing. And I know that like having faith in the fact that like, that this will help somebody or that this will reach who it needs to, um, it allows me to continue to channel the energy that I have in my body, the emotions, into productivity, into self-reliance, into helping those around me feel loved, safe, secure, and that's the stuff that I'm on this planet for. You know what I mean? And like once again, I'm not terminally unique. I am just like my brothers and sisters in recovery. I'm just like my brothers and sisters in the church. I'm just like my brothers and sisters in the streets. I have been so many people in this lifetime within one body. To have the choice today to show up for myself and others is the utmost gift that I have been given from the divine, and it truly is the promises coming true. And you can have this too. So I'm going to start wrapping it up and thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I know that this was a bit of a longer episode. There's lots to cover, but spirituality and recovery is just so vital. It's the lifeblood, the force that keeps us alive. And, we all need each other. We are all survivors. And like, how good am I to you if I'm not taking care of myself to the absolute best of my ability? That's physically, emotionally, mentally, sexually, spiritually. Those are my pillars that I need to take care of and honor. And, I really hope that you do the same, because I need you too. I need other people's support. Like, I need God to work through you so that you can help heal other people, so that, like, we're all on this planet together. We all have like families and people that we affect. Like, we all need each other to heal so that we all stop hurting each other. So I'm just here to say, like, hurt people, and healed people heal people. And so I'm just going to continue doing what I'm doing. I'm doing my part so that I keep showing up for you. And I hope that you do the same. I hope that you got something out of this video. I hope that it helps you. And like, reach out. If you're struggling, reach out. Like, reach out to this podcast, reach out to a friend, reach out to a family member, reach out to another safe person. If you're a kid and you need somebody to talk to, like, find somebody to talk to. Don't live in it, don't sit in it. Just be gentle with yourself, and just share love. And just keep doing the next right thing. And with all of this being said, I'm going to thank you for listening. Please share this with a friend or family member if there's somebody that that's struggling and maybe needs to hear a hopefully helpful message. And I will see you next Thursday. Thank you for being here.